James and Kylie Henderson. We're on Colodan, which is about 350 kilometres west of Bundaberg in the North Burnett. 4,600 hectares here of open eucalypt woodland. Blue gum and rough bark apple flats rising to narrowleaf and ironbark ridges. We run about 1,000 head of cattle, which is about 600 head breeder operation of mainly Santa Gertrudis cattle. So I'm fourth generation on this property. My great-grandfather bought it from the government back in about 1929. We've got three small kids that maybe one of them might want to take it on, but we'll just have to see. It was definitely the Millennium Drought. That was, a big eye-opener for us. A quick drive around and you could see that the system was breaking down and we needed some new answers to go forward. There was trees dying where they shouldn't be drying, there was erosion where there shouldn't be erosion. The grasses, the composition of the native pasture was changing. The cattle weren't performing that well. They were reasonable, but they weren't performing as good as what we thought they could. And obviously the financial side of it too was pretty telling. The combination of those factors and the realisation that we just couldn't keep doing the same thing expecting a different answer. We knew we had to change. Probably the two main ones that have driven the change here is really making a large effort to match cattle to feed. So really adjusting your breeder numbers and your stocking numbers and making that effort to measure the feed in your paddock and actually work out, have you got enough grass for those cattle if it doesn't rain till X amount of date. And that sort of risk management played a massive part. And that and the rotation of the cattle, we started moving the cattle more and more and more, continue to move them in smaller paddocks and distribution of water and those things. So when you could go to other places, you go to field days, you could see quite quickly the results that other people are having. Going back probably around the Millennium Drought there and in that area, we didn't take a lot of consideration to the water that ran off this place and into the reef. It wasn't, I wouldn't call it our priority. We did have areas of degraded land that we knew we needed to our Waska system. It's a deep ripping and pondage banks and repairing degraded land. I suppose that's as far as we thought. But as far as the water actually running down the creeks and into the reef, it wasn't a consideration. But it is something that's in the forefront of our minds now with the rotation of the cattle and the change in management practices and getting those waterways in this area, because we have sort of three significant creeks that run through this place. The revegetation of those creeks, the kumbunji, the water reed, the young bottle brushes and that are coming back through the rest of that paddock. It means that all that water that runs down those creeks run a lot slower, and obviously that sediment drops and it's not heading out to the reef. The other thing to consider, I suppose, is the ground cover coming out of droughts, because we maintain our ground cover a lot better. So when the rain does come at the end of the drought, a lot of that water is going into our soil. It's not hitting the ground and running off. The other mindset shift in regards to timber was also a significant one for us. So early on, I think in the millennial period there, we did engage PFSQ, Private Forestry Services Queensland. We talked to a bloke called Ken Matthews. We did some field days there with Sean Ryan and Bill Schilke and sort of had that mindset shift again that, looking at these regrowth going, well, it's not a problem, it's an opportunity, rather than spending $100 a hectare treating it and trying to keep it open, trying to battle the trees. We thought, how about we let them grow and we let them do their natural thing, which is basically let those mature trees come up and suppress the regrowth. And then the opportunity that comes around that of a well-managed forest, the dollar value return, it's a long-term investment. You've got to be thinking 25, 30 years. But there is very good returns. You just got to be dedicated to undertaking the management practices that will deliver those returns. So we went to their first carbon workshop in about 2011 in Monto Shire Hall. We're investigating it, and it took us a long time to sort of say, well, yes, that's going to work. We needed time for the carbon companies to evolve, the methodologies to evolve, and they are still evolving. To hopefully represent what we are doing here. The carbon is fast becoming a very significant part of what we do on this property. So we don't see ourselves as beef producers anymore. We are beef producers, we are timber producers, and we're carbon farmers. When droughts are on their way here now, we do have a bit more better warning we used in the old days, because of the Bureau's warnings and the science is a lot better. So we can start destocking early. We can say, well, this is where we're going to make our cuts into our cattle, and we start looking around at our feed options, going, what do we need to maintain that animal through in a viable condition, in a healthy condition score? How do we do it? What's the plan of action? How many tonnes do we need? How many dollars are we going to spend? And the sooner you do that, the sooner you start that planning, the better you will do. If you've got that plan, an action plan going into a dry period, and you'll have specific dates, and that if it hasn't rained by this date, you'll go to the next phase, which will be a greater destocking, and you've just got these cut-off dates. You've got the plan all laid out, which makes it a lot easier to manage droughts. I do remember in the kid that 93-94 drought, it was just feed, and you just had to wait till it rained, and it took a long time to rain, and it was a brutal drought, that one. So yeah, we've run the field days, and then there has been a couple who said, yep, we can do this, and they're sort of going down the same path. And there's obviously the people who are further in front than what we are doing too. We're not the only ones doing this. There are people who are better at this than what we do. I think as the economics of beef production, it's all right when interest rates are low and beef prices are high, but when it swaps back the other way, the carbon and the forestry are going to come much more relevant as people start realising the potential value, and it becomes quite a simple economic argument to change your practices. I think the biggest change is going into carbon farming, because unlike the timber where we've got to wait 25 years essentially till we get our result, our harvest, the carbon is here and now. The carbon market is operating now. So it's something as a producer you can go out and start and engage in. This last drought, it made a massive difference having that carbon cash flow in our business. It does certainly help us as a family, knowing that you've got this extra income that's external to weather. It's slightly linked, but not as much as the beef industry is. Yeah, the carbon is probably the primary driver that has changed our outlook socially and economically, I would say. Some of the byproducts of the management change and the different outlook we have, and with the carbon farming, and that has enabled us to probably invest in things like water monitoring infrastructure, some better facilities around water. It has enabled me to probably do a bit more off-farm, so to be involved with things like the AgForce Landscape Management Committee, and trying to drive a bit of change in the industry in various ways, shapes and forms. That's a direct result of how we operate. I wouldn't have had the time to do those things previously. If you manage it right and manage your time better, there's a massive difference for not only us as a family, but hopefully we can drive a bit of industry change too, which would be fantastic.